I think you need to feel it in your heart that this is what you were put on this planet to do. And as much as I liked what I was doing, I loved the people that I worked with. I had a great, like super flexible, family-friendly work environment. And yet I knew something was missing and I only have one life. So now is the time to try to make a shift and see if I can get pointed in a different direction.
Are you at a crossroads in your career or in life? Well, don't worry, because life's next chapter is waiting. This is the Second Act Success podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Russell. I'm a television producer, turned boy mom, turned business owner, podcaster, and career coach. If you are looking to start a new career or begin a fresh chapter in life, then get ready to be inspired with stories of women who have done just that. We will share advice and offer steps you can take to help figure out what your true calling in life really is. It is time to shine, so let's turn the page and get started. Welcome to Second Act Success. Today's guest is Liz McDade. Liz has a PhD in clinical psychology and worked as a scientist for years. One day she realized it was time to stop playing it safe and start leaning into her creative side. Liz took the leap and opened her own business to help educate others on the importance of living a low-waste life. Now, through her business, No Trace, Zero Waste Living, Liz is living the dream. Let's dive in. Hello, Liz. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm good, Shannon. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad to have you here. Let's talk about where your journey began. I know that you went to undergrad at Stanford. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What did you study?
I studied psychology and feminist studies. And then right after I graduated, I took a few years off to sort of think about what I wanted to do next. And I decided to go back and get a PhD in clinical psychology. I went to the University of Iowa for that. They had a specialty that I was really interested in. So that was my first big career, was getting my PhD and working in research and also doing some teaching. I did that for several years. And then at some point I realized there was something kind of missing from what I was doing. I was enjoying the work, but I also felt like maybe this isn't exactly what I'm supposed to be doing with myself.
What did you think it would be, I guess, when you got your PhD? What were you kind of looking forward to at that time?
I've always been a very curious person, and I really enjoy the scientific process of sort of trying to uncover and understand how things work, but also trying to make a difference with that information and with the process of science. So I was working at a research nonprofit as one of the researchers. And when I was actually doing the work, I realized that it's a long, slow process. The process of scientific discovery, it takes a lot of time, which it should. We don't want to rush to conclusions. And it's really cut out for people who that is their true calling, is to dedicate their life to understanding a question and finding those answers. And I just felt like I don't know if I have the passion to dedicate my life to this process. So I think it was just before I was doing the work, I didn't quite know what it would feel like and how long the sort of journey would be. And when I was finally in there doing the work that I had been wanting to do, I'm not loving this as much as I thought I would.
You know, I feel like a lot of people do that, right? We go to school, we work towards something without really knowing what it's like to be in that career. Mm-hmm. A lot of people will just choose to stay with it and feel kind of stuck and you're not as fulfilled. I like that you were self-aware enough to know that this wasn't exactly what you were feeling fulfilled with and that you wanted to go and find something different.
Yes, that was definitely part of it. Another piece, so the company I worked for had a blog, and I wrote a few blog posts sort of bringing some of the scientific information to a more broader audience. A lot of my work would be academic papers that get published in these journals that 5 people will read. And so part of what I got to do in that position was bring some of that really academic information to a broader audience of teachers and public health educators, public health professionals, I realized this is so fun. I really like creating content, which is different than writing an academic paper and, conducting a scientific study. So that was part of it, was realizing this content creation thing is really fun. The other part of it was like, there was probably a little voice inside of me years ago that was telling me I have more of a creative side, even though I like the science and I enjoyed being curious in that way. If I had listened to myself when I was like in my early 20s, I probably would have said like, you know what, there's more of a creative side to me. And if I just have a little faith, I could probably find a way to make this work. But part of me was afraid. I didn't know what kind of a career that could be. I've always liked making things with my hands, working with my hands and writing and creating content. So I sort of went the safer route, which was, go to college, go to graduate school, get a job in my field. Then when I was in it, I was like,
Yeah. What were you researching at the time?
At the time, I was working on randomized controlled trials of a pregnancy prevention program. I was also doing some research looking at how do we get a more diverse workforce in science, technology, engineering, and math? What are some of the pathways? Those are two very different projects, but that was some of the work that was happening. And then my own personal interests and writings were often about the impact of media use on children and teens. Those are kind of like the three different things that I was working on at the time, which were all super fascinating to me.
Really interesting.
Yeah, super interesting. I feel like to be a scientist, it's really a vocation. You have to have that calling. My husband is in academics, and I see how he loves staring at spreadsheets and writing code and writing his academic papers. I think you need to feel it in your heart that this is what you were put on this planet to do. And as much as I liked what I was doing, I loved the people that I worked with. I had a great, super flexible, family-friendly work environment. And yet I knew something was missing and I only have one life. So now is the time to try to make a shift and see if I can get pointed in a different direction.
If you knew you wanted to stop your work as a scientist and move into content creation or whatever path you were going to go into at the time, did you know what direction you were going to take?
It was interesting because at the same time that I was sort of thinking twice about this path that I was on, I also got really turned on to the zero waste movement. I've always been a very environmentally conscious person. I learned about this sort of extreme version of that, which is how much trash can you eliminate from your life? And that just really inspired me to think about and look around at what we're doing in my own family. The main part of the zero waste movement that I've been really focused on is sort of our grocery shopping and also our bathroom products and that sort of thing. So I started to look around at what are the foods that we're eating and buying and bringing into the house, and how much waste are we creating in that process. I realized that it would actually be quite simple to start shopping in a different way if I had a few basic tools like beeswax kitchen wraps and drawstring bags. Those very simple tools were not available in my local stores. That got me sewing again. That got me working with fabric again, got me working with my hands again. And so at the same time that I was sort of thinking twice about this path that I was on at work, I also started making these things for my family. And then I started selling those things. So it sort of was happening at the same time that I was, sort of questioning what I was doing and then finding this other sort of way to express myself in a way that could also have a really positive impact on the earth. That got me really focused in this new direction.
Did you think that this could be a profitable change for you? Was that the catalyst to make you leave your job and see what this could become?
Yeah. So I was doing this on the side of my other position to sort of test the waters. And I tested the waters for a couple of years. And then the number of orders that I was getting was exceeding my capacity. And I realized that there was a lot of potential here. And then I saw that it was going to be profitable and I would have a hard time doing both. So after a couple of years of just doing it on the side, I realized this could work. And so I took the leap, and yeah, it's been great. I have pivoted along the way. It hasn't been like a super straight path, but it has been an amazing path, and I have no regrets about it at all.
That's so wonderful. And I think it's really smart that you did start it as a side business and you kind of watched it grow a little bit to get it to a place where you felt comfortable to kind of make that decision. Were you selling on Etsy, on Amazon? Talk to me about the process of where you were getting these customers buying your products.
I started in 2017 on Etsy and with my website. Then I slowly added more over time. So I started going to farmers markets and other like craft fairs. I started selling to stores, so doing wholesale. And I started selling on a wholesale directory called fair.com. Stores started reaching out to me. Things started to grow over time as I put myself out there more, and I was, trying to be active on social media.
So as a scientist, researcher, you're keeping to yourself, you're doing your research, you're doing your work, and now you're having to go out into the community and go online and really create this more visible version of yourself to build this business. Was that a little tricky for you?
Oh yeah, for sure. And when I first started doing it, I was like, this is crazy. Like, why would somebody with a PhD be selling at the farmer's market, like hauling my tables, setting up this tent, hauling all of my goods out? But yeah, I just knew there was something here that I should be doing. So yeah, it was definitely awkward.
You're just having to put yourself out there. You're building a website. You're creating an Etsy page. It's all the creativity that you had longed for. And you were learning. You're researching how to start a business. So you're using the skills from your first act to really help build your second act in a way. Is there a need for this? How can I create these no trace, good for the environment products that people want? Do they want it? And then you get to the point where, okay, it's out there. There's a need. I'm going to make a go of this.
Yeah, exactly.
What's next to really bring it to the next level from a side business to a full-time?
Along the way, I had started getting some help. I had a couple of people who were helping me. So I was able to reach out to more stores because I had more capacity to make things with helpers. Also, I was able to go to more events. And then COVID hit. So COVID hit 7 months after I took this full-time leap. And that shut down all of my events. I could no longer go to the farmer's market. Some of my retailers were closed, so they were not ordering. That was a little bit terrifying. At the same time, as I was doing these larger and larger orders, like I had done my largest order ever for a subscription box service. First of all, people do not want to pay for things that are made in the US. I mean, I was finding customers, but it felt like a constant struggle to say, no, I want to pay myself and the people who work here in my community a livable wage. And that price is more than what we get when we buy stuff that's made overseas. So that was tricky. And at the same time, I was realizing, I think an even more sustainable way to sort of do this would be to help people make their own versions, to sort of empower people to make their own tools at home with resources that they already have, instead of spending so much time on building a product and marketing and packaging that product. I mean, there's definitely a market for sustainable products. Absolutely. We cannot make everything ourselves. But at the same time, I started to feel like maybe I should be doing a little bit more of the teaching and encouraging people to do this on their own and a little bit less of this mass production. I love that I'm making things here in the community and I've got people here in the community helping me. But as a customer, people often want the cheapest version of something. That was a little bit of a struggle, this idea of what is the most sustainable way to help people reach sort of a more low-waste kitchen, a low-waste home. Those things combined, that's sort of what pivoted me to where I am now. I'm still making products for stores and I'm still selling products online, but I have started pivoting towards more of an education focus. So really helping empower other people to learn to make these things for themselves, for their own family. Last year, I was like, all right, let me think through do I really want my business model to be? And so that's where I've landed and where I feel like this feels really good. This feels like where I'm supposed to be.
Interesting twist. You could be so focused on the product, selling and staying in that lane. I love that you started taking the pivot to educate and to bring this to other people because you learned it yourself. You taught yourself how to make these.
Mm-hmm.
So why not teach other people? So your company is called No Trace.
Yes. No Trace. I have started offering more in-person and online workshops. I started by doing in-person workshops right before COVID happened. I was teaching people in the community how to make their own beeswax wraps, which was super fun. And then COVID shut everything down. And now that things have opened up again, I have started teaching sewing classes here in my community. I just wrapped up a week of sewing camp, which was super fun with kids, with
so
about 7
great.
kids. So then I turned my beeswax wrap in-person workshop to an online workshop. It's like available anytime for somebody to take it. I've also created a couple other online workshops that teach people some really simple zero waste bag designs. You're probably aware that the fashion industry creates a ton of waste. And so all of the products that I make are designed without any waste. I've got 2 workshops that help teach people how to sew these 2 different designs of mine without creating any textile waste in the process. And then I've started selling PDF sewing patterns that are also zero waste design bags that tackle this issue of having a more low waste home at the same time as creating something without any waste and creating something that's designed that can be composted at the very end of its life, sort of thinking full picture about the products. I mean, that's always been the core of what I've done is what are products that can help us fight waste, that aren't creating waste in the process of being made, and that aren't going to end up as waste when they're completely worn out. That's been my design journey from the beginning. So now I have online offerings for those purposes and then in-person classes as well.
Are you getting a lot of people online interested in learning how to create a no-waste home and use these products and make these products?
I forgot to mention, I have a YouTube channel where I do weekly tutorials as well. And I have a Facebook group too. So yes, the online community is strong. A lot of people are really interested in these topics, are really interested in this DIY approach to fighting waste. It's been good. Yeah, it's been growing and my workshops are selling. And in-person is so fun. I do have some offerings for all ages, but just getting kids excited about making things themselves is so fun. I don't come at the kids with a ton of like zero waste and sustainability, information. I just want to get them inspired to make things themselves. And also I love having them realize how many steps are involved. For example, in making a simple pair of shorts, just sort of appreciating like it takes a couple hours to do this when you're learning. And then I'm hopeful that as they grow, they'll realize like, wow, maybe I shouldn't get these $4 shorts from Old Navy because probably someone's not making a lot of money off of those shorts. So yeah, I feel like I've found a pretty good balance now between some in-person offerings and the online. It is a bit much because I do still have products and I do still have stores who shop from me. At some point, I will probably phase out something, probably not the online, but probably phase out some of the other pieces of my business. But right now it's a nice balance of sort of income and different activities. So.
You're really giving back to your community with your classes, and with hiring local people to help you make these. It seems like it's just all encompassing of what your mission is, right? Like giving back, teaching the younger kids, teaching adults who, I mean, it sounds great to live a no waste life. But how do you do that? Or how do you create this no waste home? There's probably a lot of people who want that, but don't know where to start. So it sounds like your business really can teach the foundations of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I have a ton of resources on my website that help people with all the different questions that you might have if you want to start shopping package free, basically, is what we try to do. Although, I also encourage people to just do what you can. Like, we're not perfect. I encourage people to just take the steps that they can. That's the best way to get started, is like one small step at a time. But yeah, I have a ton of resources that really break it down I have meal plans on there, like how do you shop and how do you feed your family if you're just using bulk bins and loose produce and all that stuff. So
Liz, I love that this whole idea started from you enjoying writing the blogs at your former company.
I know.
And now you're creating all of this content.
Yeah.
Like, what's your favorite part of this business, of being a business owner?
I've always loved writing, and I still love writing, and I feel like I am a writer at heart. So I have an email list, and I love writing my weekly emails to my email list. I get a blog up every now and then.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot if you're still making the products and making the courses and teaching the classes.
Luckily, most of the products I'm not making anymore. So my helpers mostly do that, but I do all of the shipping myself and just managing all the inventory. And I'm pretty much everything, customer service and social media marketing. The main content that I do now is a weekly YouTube video, because I feel like video is where we are, where people want to be. And I want to be where people want to be. I want to offer what they want.
Did you ever think you would be a small business owner when you were going for your PhD?
No. I mean, right before I started graduate school, I had this idea of like trying to sell some of my handmade things online, like a brief, fleeting idea. But I don't think I ever really pictured myself as a small business owner. It felt so risky, honestly. When I look at the work I was doing, it was risky too. I was at a nonprofit. We were funded by grants. There was no long-term promise of a job. And I think that's the case wherever you're working, unless you're a tenured professor. There is no guarantee that your job is going to be there for you forever. So now I have that perspective, and I almost feel like it's safer because I've got so many of these skills, and I feel like if something were to happen and things were to completely fall apart, I kind of have a sense now of how to do this, how to start something, how to build a community, how to connect with customers, find out what they want. I feel like all the skills that I've gotten have been super helpful and give me a big sense of security, even though it's, it's still risky, I suppose.
But you're in control. And I feel that way too, because I come from the entertainment industry, which because you had told me your brother is in the industry. Mm-hmm. Like, it's very freelance based. So there is no stability. When I left and I started my own business, it was very scary. But then now that it did succeed, and now I'm on my second business, I feel like I'm in control. If you need to take a week off, 2 weeks off to go on vacation, you can do that because hey, I can put my orders on hold. Maybe a YouTube video doesn't get up. You can do it ahead of time. Right. You're in control of what happens with the business. And there's something so satisfying about having that control when you and I were both used to kind of being in that wavery kind of world beforehand.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's been one of the amazing pieces of working for myself now. Even though my last position was, like I said, super family friendly, amazing people, now I have so much control over my schedule. I can run some errands in the middle of the day. I don't need to feel guilty about that. I can be with my kids on their, I was a chaperone for my daughter's class camping trip. So that was really awesome. I just have so much more flexibility, and I don't need to feel guilty about prioritizing that family time.
No, and especially as a mom, because same with me, I have 2 little ones and they can come with me to work, and that's just so nice. Do you have a brick and mortar? Do you have a studio that you work out of?
Yeah, so I have a studio. It's a standalone garage, detached garage that we basically rebuilt. And that is where everything happens. So it's at my home, which is awesome. Everything used to be in my home, which was bananas. So now it's got its own space and it holds everything.
So when you're teaching classes, do the kids come there, or do you teach?
Yeah. So the kids come, and it's got a patio, and it's got space so we can kind of spread out and be indoor, outdoor during these COVID times. It's got double doors on 2 sides, and it's very breezy, and it's working really well for just feeling like a safer place to be inside.
Do your kids like taking your classes when you're
teaching? Yes, they do. The oldest daughter is almost 14. So this is the second summer I've done sewing camps. And so first week she gets to participate, and the second week she gets to be a helper and she can make a little money helping me. And my youngest daughter loves sewing. She's constantly making little clothes for her dolls and bags for her water bottle, like little water bottle tool belts.
How fun.
Yeah, cute little things like that.
You could just continue and do a ton of workshops for kids to make different things like that. There's not a lot of that where they're making something tangible that they can be proud of. Kids nowadays, you probably know more than me, I just hear from my kids, they care so much about the planet. And we cannot throw something that is recyclable in the regular trash in my house. And my kids are on it. They're interested in it. So what you're doing is something that can be of such an interest to them.
Right now I love being here at my home, but that limits my capacity. I think when my kids are out of the house, I'll probably try to get something bigger where I can be there more often and we can have more offerings for the community. But right now I have my hands full, and I also want to be here at the home. I can get my kids to and from school, no problem. I'm here when they get dropped off from school. And it just feels really nice for this stage of my life to be working here, even though it sort of limits what I'm capable of a little bit, but it's totally worth it.
So when you look back, do you have any regrets from leaving your work in the research areas to go into business for yourself? No.
My only regret really is not seeing the potential that's out there, sort of not knowing what all of my options were, not kind of leaning into that a bit more. Also, at the same time, I don't regret all of that experience that I had. I feel like I learned so much, and I met amazing people. I made wonderful friends. Those are skills that work for any kind of work that I'm doing, the things that I learned in my PhD program. And maybe someday I will go back and just do clinical work and just have clients. I did a little bit of that during my postdoc years. I'm not saying I won't ever come back to that, because I know that's another big need. Mental health care is a huge need, but that is not at all on my priority list right now. But I am glad that I have that too. It could be something that I do in the future if things change for me somehow.
And that's why your first act was so valuable, because it gave you those options for down the road. And I always like to say that whatever you came from, you can go back to. You still have your PhD. You can go into clinical. You can go back into research. You have those options. And just having more options just leads to a fuller life. So you don't feel like you're stuck in that one box.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
I feel like you're not alone. Like you get that little feeling in your head that maybe this isn't the right path for you. Why do we not listen to that inner voice?
Yeah, it's a really good question. For me, I didn't really have any great role models or ideas of what was possible in terms of the whole creative world that I've gotten into. That could be part of it. And like I said, it didn't feel safe. There's this whole cliche or stereotype of a starving artist. People who want to go into the arts are never going to make ends meet. Right. So I think those kinds of things were bouncing around in my head a bit. As a parent now, I'm always trying to encourage my kids, like whatever their interest is that they might mention, if that's what they love, they're going to find a way to make it work. If you have that passion, you can work to figure out how to make it possible. I don't know why so many of us don't listen to that little voice, just general fear. And also, like I said, I had a safety net, and I still have a safety net here. I have a happy marriage, and he works full time. So that's really helpful.
There's a lot that goes into decisions that we make. It's just trying to figure out the right one. And this seems like this was really the perfect fit for you. Now that you're in it, are you just amazed at what you've built?
Yeah, I definitely look back and I'm like, oh, wow, this has come a long way, and things are clicking and things are growing. And so I definitely try to sit back and appreciate that, because, I mean, as you know, it's a lot of work. The to-do list never ends when you own your own small business. There's so much that is on my shoulders. So when I start to feel overwhelmed and like, I'm never going to get through all of this, I remind myself, like, it'll happen eventually.
Right.
I don't have to be running at breakneck speed and comparing myself to other people who don't, they're in different situations. Maybe they don't have families, or they don't want to spend time with their families. I don't know. I don't know how people work. I mean, I hear some interviews with folks who have families and they're working like early in the morning. And then after, I'm like, when do you have dinner with your children? When do you sleep? I want to do those things. I want to sleep. And I want to spend time with my family. So
it's a hard balance. I used to tell my kids, they actually get really annoyed because I still sing this song to them. I have 2 boys, so they would be all over the place. And I'm like, okay, one thing at a time. And I would sing this little song, one thing at a time, one thing at a time, to try to focus them. And I find myself singing that to myself in my head. Yeah, because you know what? It's true. And like those moments like you just described where you sit there and you're like in complete overwhelm and it's just too much. I try to close the computer and just step back and be like, okay, I'm doing one thing at a time. What am I doing at this moment? And it takes a lot of like coaching ourselves, don't you think?
Totally. Absolutely. I mean, it's like a daily reminder really to myself that like, just gotta do what I can get done. Trust that other things are going to happen. I will get to them. And I also remember that there are stages where, you know, I'm extra busy. I just launched another online workshop. And so that was a really busy stage. And then there's going to be stages where it's a little less busy. So I try to remind myself of that.
That's great. So you're based in California?
Yeah, I'm in the Santa Cruz area.
So if listeners are in that area, then they can possibly go to some in-person workshops with you.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. On my website and see what's coming up. And you could also join my email list and you'll know what's coming up too.
For listeners that are in other places in the country or in other countries, they can just go to your website and follow you on YouTube and kind of participate on your workshops and follow you on your videos.
Go to my website. It's notraceshop.com. You can also learn in person with me on YouTube, or you can get one of my workshops and learn online, or one of my sewing patterns and learn online.
What is your favorite project that you've worked on in this stage of your life?
I guess these in-person classes and workshops are probably my favorite, even though they're the most work, but they're so fun just to be there connecting with kids and adults and helping them learn a new skill that hopefully they'll use the rest of their life. And I think about the kids who come, I'm like, maybe one of these is going to start making their own wardrobe one day. And, you know, that part is really awesome.
Why do you think that living a no-waste life and leaving no trace behind is so important in today's world?
It's really about a connection. When you think about the waste that you're creating, it's really about trying to feel a stronger connection to caring for the planet in general. So it's not just about a basket of trash. It's about leaving as small of a footprint as we can on this planet and really being mindful of climate change. That's the largest environmental problem facing us. And trash is a part of that. It's probably not the biggest part of fighting climate change, but it helps you stay connected to that issue in your everyday small actions. Remember that we are fighting to preserve a very precious resource and all of our small actions matter. So that is really why I think it's important. I have blog posts on this, but you know, some of the biggest things you can do for the environment are very simple, like voting for people who care about climate change. That's probably the biggest thing anyone can do. I just think it's a nice way to remember that we're all stewards of this planet and everything we do matters, but also just to take it one small step at a time. And I think when people start to take one small step, they see more and more steps they can take and things start to grow and snowball. So I think it's a really nice way to become an even stronger environmentalist.
Well said. It's very true. It's like, this is our home on this very big planet. What can we do within these walls to do our part?
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
What is the common thread maybe between your first act and your second act?
I have always tried to give back in some way, to do something that is going to make the world a better place in my own small way that I can. So the research that I was doing was very much, you know, I mentioned public health issues and educational access issues. And now it's more about taking care of the planet and our resources and fighting waste in the kitchen, fighting textile waste on a broader scale. So I think that's really kind of the thread, is trying to do work that matters, that's going to leave something of a positive impact, even if it's a little one.
All right, it's time for our 5 fast cues of the week. Here we go. Name one thing that these different chapters in your life have taught you.
I guess try listening to that inner voice more. That's probably been my big message. I think a lot of the answers to what we should be doing, we know them. We just don't, it's hard to listen. It's hard to hear them. So taking time to do that, like going for a walk without a podcast in my ears.
That's true. I feel like we're always listening to something, or there's just talk everywhere. Really good advice. Would you recommend taking a leap into a big life change to your best friend?
Absolutely. It's good to have that safety net and sort of think through what's the worst thing that could happen and be ready for that. And then if you can accept that, then absolutely, I'd say to go for it.
What is one piece of advice that you would give to someone who's starting their second act?
That's a great question. I think it's hard to see everything that might unfold, but as much as you can sort of think ahead to like, what is the long-term goal here? Where could you see this going? How is this going to sort of sustain you down the road? So sort of trying to think about big picture if you take this leap. So for example, I have a friend who just opened a studio, a Pilates studio. I was talking with her about that, like, okay, well, thinking through this, like, how many hours do you want to be there? How is that going to financially work? And just sort of taking that time to think through how it's going to work. And you don't have to know everything right away, but if you can sort of have a big picture idea of how this could work for you, how this could support you, that's going to really help you out to understand going down the road, how this could be a sustainable business for you. You just take a moment and do some simple math and, look at the numbers. That would be my advice.
So what does the next chapter look like for you?
I'm going to be having even more in-person offerings and get at least one more online offering, and then just sort of continue to serve my audience and grow my community. So I have a Facebook community of people who are interested in zero waste sewing and crafting, and just want to continue to see how I can serve them and provide that.
Where can our audience connect with you?
I've got a website, notraceshop.com. If you want to join my email list, I would go there. I'm also on Instagram, if that's your thing. No Trace Shop is my handle. If you search for No Trace on Facebook, I'll pop up. If you search for Zero Waste Sewing, my community will pop up if you want to be in the community with me. And I'm on YouTube. So whatever your channel is, I'm probably on there.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, Liz, this has been so great. I'm going to add one more thing to your plate. I think you should start a podcast. You should do a podcast about this. I mean, you're just so well spoken about it, and you know so much, and you're just bringing so much good to the world. So
thank you, Shannon. That's so sweet. Yeah, I would actually love to do even more content creation, like a podcast and more writing. If I had the time. If only I had the time.
You've got enough on your plate right now, so I won't hold you to it. But down the road.
Thank you. That would be awesome. I would love that.
Well, thank you for being here and for talking us through your journey and inspiring people to not only start their second act like you did, but to live a no-waste life and try to do their little small part to help the planet as well.
Thanks, Shannon. Thanks so much for having me. This was a great conversation.
That was so much fun. I learned a lot today from Liz. She has successfully taken her skills as a scientist to launch her own business, teaching others to care for the planet step by step. It is just incredible to see Liz using her PhD in a new way to create a life that fits her and her family. So impressive. Don't forget to follow Liz McDade at notraceshop.com. I hope you have enjoyed this month of July with 2 episodes a week. We will be back to weekly episodes of Second Act Success every week on Tuesdays starting next week. Talk to you then. Thank you for joining us. I hope you found some gems of inspiration and some takeaways to help you on your path to Second Act Success. To view show notes from this episode, recommend a guest with a great story, and learn more about us, visit secondactsuccess.co. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. Reviews only take a few moments, and they really do mean so much. Thank you again for listening. I'm Shannon Russell, and this is Second Act Success.